And now we return to the burning, the end, the cruel end of the hunter's dream. Because for those who don't know, once you defeat Murgo's wet nurse and it's announced that the nightmare has been slain, you're kind of taken a little bit by surprise because you've never really seen this sort of thing happen in the game before, and because you don't really have anywhere else to go and you're wondering, where's Murgo and all this? You travel back to the hunter's dream for some answers, and as soon as you get there, you see the entire hunter's workshop is on fire. You don't really know what to make of this, so you decide to go and find Gerhman. He isn't nowhere where he usually is, so you decide that the best course of action is to talk to the doll, who says he is waiting for us beside the tree inside the lily field. So, you arrive there and you talk to Gerhman, and, well, this is it. Your duty seemingly has been fulfilled in the eyes of the hunters, and definitely in the eyes of Gerhman. So, he offers you a choice. You can either allow Gerhman to kill you where you stand right now, and he promises that you will wake up in the dawn of a new day in the real world in Yharnam, or you can say no to him. To be honest, it'd be worth, and I've never really thought about doing this before, but I think let's talk about the first ending to this game, because it's still a little bit more integral as to what happens if you refuse to let Gerhman kill you. So we put a pause on that for now. So let's just see what happens when you just decide that this is it. You sort of just want to wake up in the real world. You don't want to have anything else to do with the hunters, the healing church, Yharnam by any chance. So let's just talk about the endings.
Good hunter, you've done now. I will show you mercy. You will die, forget the dream, and awake under the morning sun. You will be freed from this terrible hunter's dream. Farewell, my keen hunter. Fear the blood.
It's a bit late now to say fear the blood, but, well, you see Gerhman raises out of his chair, raises his scythe. Readies, and down we go. Now, it is pseudo-theorized that when the bell chimes, as we wake up in Yharnam, when the sun rises once again, it's theorized that the bell is also the same bell that chimes in the Kingdom of Lothric in Dark Souls 3 for when the Unkindled begins to rise. And considering that Dark Souls 3 releases an entire year after Bloodborne, it's not even unreasonable to assume that this is the way that how Bloodborne and the Dark Souls games are connected in a very small roundabout way. A lot of people speculate it's kind of, if you want to believe that, then fair enough. It doesn't really affect anything. But it's more just one of those coincidences that seems kind of though they intended to do it that way. Because From Software is very, very good at doing this sort of thing. So that's theoretically the good ending to this game. That we may have been killed, but we live again. We don't know if we turn into a monster, as we were told by Gascoigne. We have no idea what sort of world we're waking up to. We don't really know if the world could ever return to the way it was again. We don't know what happens to anyone else. It is just us to be freed into the world. Whatever we do next is, well, you tell me. But does that mean we're any more safe in the world? Remember, we started the game literally in a clinic. We fight off petrified dogs, people inflicted with the frenzy of the blood. And there's still half a dozen monsters and beings rocking around the place. How is anybody supposed to feel okay being brought back into this just because the sun has come up? But that's why the second ending exists. Which I'll just play very quickly. Well, yes, of course, there is this bit with the doll.
Farewell, good hunter. May you find your worth in the waking world.
Well, yes, again, that might be the only inclination to suggest that is the only good ending, because the doll, perhaps the only being in this entire game who feels any genuine pity for us, will pray to hope that we are okay. She is, in theory, the only one we can really resort to. But then, there's what happens if you say no.
Dear, oh dear. What was it? The hunt? The blood? Or the horrible dream?
And you see Gerhman shaking. He doesn't want to go through with this. He knows that and you know that.
It always comes down to the hunter's helper to clean up after these sorts of messes. Tonight, Gerhman joins the hunt.
And since Gerhman has now joined the hunt, is when the fight begins proper. And really, this is the first time they've ever pulled something like this out. It is mentor versus student, and only one can remain. it is. It's probably easily my favorite. Well, it's my top pick for best soundtrack of this game because it's sad. It's tragic. It's a waltz of tragedy because you're fighting the man who knows more about what's gone on than you do. You're fighting the man who offered you refuge. You're fighting the man who allowed you to study the runes of those who have slain. He is theoretically the man who has been helping us this entire game, along with his doll. This is theoretically a place where you can call home, if there is such a place to call home in Yharnam, or beyond it. And because you would rather live rather than live through a lie, it's simply not to be accepted. But then, of course, the question raises for the player, what happens immediately afterwards? Well, since we know sort of what does happen, well, one of two things happen, but we'll get to that next time. The only thing that's a little hard to sort of like articulate because we're just listening to the soundtrack is the sound of Gerhman's grunts and how he slashes his scythe back and forth. Because, as I mentioned before, even when he tries to like raise himself out of his chair to fight you, you can see his fingers are trembling. It's like he doesn't want to do with this any other way, but since we've disobeyed him, there's not much else we can do, and there's a strong like feeling of reluctance that is the key to this sort of fight, is that it shouldn't have to have been this way, but apparently that's what it's come to be. Now, just before we go, it should also be worth mentioning is what happens when we defeat Gerhman. Because Gerhman is extremely quick, his moves are devastating, and he still promises to free us when he kills us. So it's not exactly as if Gerhman goes back on his word, but it appears that the only options really open to us are freedom or death. At least as far as what Gerhman is understanding. Because what hope is there when there is no hope? But then, as you remember, what happens when Gerhman falls? The moon presence. Theoretically, the Great One that gave Gerhman his strength and gave him his authority.
And so, the hunt begins again.
So, there is one more ending to speak of, but to explain it was something we're going to have to probably cover next time, because it is completely optional to fight the moon presence immediately after Gerhman, but quite a lot of people... it's unfortunate that the great... that the moon presence kind of exists at all, because it doesn't take away from anything. It's more just for the sake of getting like the true ending. Because remember, part of the journey throughout Yharnam was to collect 3 umbilical cords, and by collecting all 3 is when you can actually fight the moon presence immediately after Gerhman. So it's a little bit of a challenge that you go from one extraordinarily difficult but very satisfying boss to you fighting an entire Great One of itself afterwards, like immediately afterwards. But I will say is that it's also again one of those things where it's to ask Gerhman. We were molded and taught by Gerhman, but what taught Gerhman? And that is where like our true journey comes to a head and to an end next time. So I thank all of you again for checking out Gerhman the First Hunter OST, and I will see all of you guys again in the next video. Take care, and bye-bye for now.